EST 2016. This is interviews, music reviews, and more. This is The Hodder Show.
What is up, everybody? We're rolling audio here today on episode 370 of The Hodder Show. I hope you guys are doing absolutely fantastic. Thank you so very much for tuning in and clicking that play button on today's episode of the podcast. We got a really fun episode for you here today, as I try to do every single week right here on The Hodder Show. We are sitting down for another edition of the Hodder Show Music Showcase, this time around covering WCS's brand new EP, World on Fire. And joining me for this is frontman of the band, Matthew Tyler DeLeo, for what is a really interesting, fun, cathartic conversation. We talk at length about the writing and recording process of the EP, of course, hear each track. Then Matthew Tyler DeLeo gives us some insight on what each song is about and kind of some interesting stories from each song. Then afterwards, he tells us about the state of WCS and what this EP meant to him and why it was super important for him to still release this record, even though there is some unfortunate news that he does share with us about the future of WCS. But he also goes into some pretty extreme detail about what happened with WCS and also the issues that you can have within a band. And it's a very cathartic conversation, and I know a lot of musicians definitely can relate to that. And then he also talks about what's next for himself. So buckle in. It's like a 2-hour long podcast, some great content here. I hope that you guys enjoy it. Before we jump in, I want to take a quick second to give a huge shout out to everyone who supported last week's episode of the show, my chat with pro wrestling referee and promoter for Slam the Stigma, Brian Renda. It was a fantastic event on Saturday. I hope that a few of you were able to go and check it out. If not, the live stream is still available. So if you want to give a donation and watch the event, you can do so for, I think, another week. That link will be up. So go to Slam the Stigma on Facebook, follow the links there, and you will find the live stream. Go check it out, give a donation. You get to have some great entertainment. And when we come back from the other side of the break here, we're going to dive into the Hodder Show Music Showcase, covering WCS's World on Fire, featuring the frontman Matthew Tyler DeLeo, once we hear a word from the sponsors who are helping the Hodder Show grow. We got Matthew Tyler DeLeo back here on the Hodder Show, this time talking a little bit about WCS's brand new EP that just came out April 7th, World on Fire, here on the Hodder Show Music Showcase. Matt, what's up, man? It's good to see you.
TJ, it's been a while. You have not aged, period.
Oh, stop it.
And meanwhile, I look haggard. I lost a fight to a lawnmower, and there goes the emo-over that I've had. But it's good to be back, my friend.
Yeah, man, it's good to talk to you. I was glad to hear from you. And it's funny because we found out before we started that we're actually like the exact same age. And I commented on how you look a lot better than me for being almost 32 or 32 or whatever. It's
I'm slightly older than you, and I'm walking around, and I've bumped into people that I've went to high school with, and I'm just looking at them, and I'm like, Are you sure we're the same age? Because like you look haggard and dead, and I'm just getting riper, and I'm just sitting there going, it has to be children. It has to be having kids or actual responsibilities. And meanwhile, I'm just trying to take over the world, so I am going to live forever. So
isn't that how some villains start their monologue? Yeah, whatever. It's fine.
One person's hero is another person's villain, or whatever.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Oh no, I hear you though. I'm the same. Sometimes I'll run into people and I'm like, "You look a lot better than me," or it's like, "Whoa, what happened?" That's funny, but it's cool, man. It's good to talk to you because we are, of course, gonna dive into the brand new EP, World on Fire. It's cool, man. I'm really excited to jump into it here. So obviously, for those of you who are not familiar with the Hodder Show Music Showcase, we're going to talk a little bit before we hear the tracks about kind of the background of the EP, the recording process, and all that fun stuff. We're going to hear the music, then we're going to come back and do a little track by track. And also, there's a few other things that we need to make sure we talk about about kind of the state of WCS and also your future and everything. So we're gonna for sure talk about that. But let's just jump in head first here, man. Walk me through the writing and recording process for World on Fire.
So the writing and recording process, most of it happened during the pandemic. And that contributes to the overall theme of the songs, the everything pretty much took place during the course of the pandemic. And me and my guitarist Paul J. Doran were on like a really sort of good chemistry type of situation where I like he would walk in and say, "Oh, I've got this riff," and I'd sit there and I'd listen to it and I'd go, "Okay, this is what I feel the melody is going to be." And then afterwards, I'd sit there and I'd listen to the demo that he would usually record from those sessions, and I'd sit there and go, "Okay, how does this music make me feel?" And, a lot of the times when I do my songwriting, it's very much based on things that are going on in my life or things that I've observed in the world around me. And so much of this album and of this of the recordings are of me just taking some time out and watching the news, watching other people react to the COVID-19 pandemic, and that sort of bled into the songwriting. I'm not going to lie, during this period of time, like, Paul and I were knocking out songs left, right, and center. I think within the span of a year, I probably had written, like, maybe 10, 11, 12, like, decent bangers, and when the things started opening up again, we just looked at it and go, "Okay, let's test these songs out in front of a live audience and then figure out where to go to from that point on." And so we sat down and we started, testing out the songs, and we realized which ones the audience responded very well to. And we decided, okay, well, here's an entire list of songs that we know go over like gangbusters. Which ones do we do for the EP? And for this particular one, it was actually split down the middle. Uh, Paul J. Doran and Mario Cabral, our drummer, basically wanted something to be more intense, wanted something that was more rocky, whereas me and our bassist, Michael Barnov, wanted something that was more intimate, more alternative rock, something that had more of a Japanese rock slash alternative rock kind of feel. And me looking at the situation going, okay, is this something that's really worth fighting and splitting hairs for? No. I'll give it to Paul and Mario. We'll do the more traditional rocky slash punk stuff, but the next time we go into the recording studio, we will do something that is more aligned with the songs that we wanted to do. And I'm quite happy that one of the songs that we wanted to do wound up in this EP, which was Broken, because I was sitting there going, we need to have one song that represents the stuff that me and Mikey want to do. And Broken was the one that we fought tooth and nail to get into the EP.
And it's interesting you say that because Broken is definitely and obviously we're gonna dive in a little more with each song on the track by track, but
Yep.
the Broken is definitely it's a great middle road, and it's very much it's a unique track
Mhm.
compared to the more, like you're saying, kind of the more rock style. And that's something I got right away from the EP within the first few seconds. I was like, "Oh, this
Mhm.
is kind of an interesting direction." Like it's a lot more, and I think it suits this EP a little bit
Mhm.
more, given what you're saying about talking about everything that's been going on in the world the last couple of years and the
Mhm.
pandemic and everything. Like it's really I get the feeling that there's a lot of frustrations being vented
A
for
lot.
people of our, for
Mhm.
millennials, really. Like I really get that feeling for sure.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie, because once again, everything that I was writing about was stuff that I was dealing with at the time. And like for example, we have this one song called Hand That Feeds where, I was venting about, did you graduate and get a degree yet have no future, just misery? It's because they lied to you. And I'm like, there's so much societal pressure that is put on younger generations to, oh, if you go to college, you get yourself a degree or a diploma. You can graduate and get yourself like a dream job, and your life will be, you could get, you can, get that wife, get that nice picket fence, go on vacations, and have a middle to upper class level upbringing. And I'm like, none of that happened to a huge chunk of people that I know, including myself. And I'm like, this is all kind of BS. For example, These Crazy Times, which was based around me watching news reports on people that were like, okay, there's people that are panic buying, and elderly people and immunocompromised people can't get much needed groceries because everyone else is going up and buying things full circle. There was the Black Lives Matter protests. There was also Bolsonaro basically allowing mining companies to bulldoze the Amazon rainforest, which was causing environmental damage because it was known as the world's lungs. That's was the nickname. So we were dealing with all different types of stuff, from financial catastrophe, environmental crisis, racial unrest, and just this sort of deluge of suck. And I'm just sort of sitting there going, well, this is how it makes me feel. And hopefully there are other people that feel this exact same way. Because if not, I don't want to be millennial shouts at cloud, but
Millennial shouts at cloud.
shouts
I
at
love that.
cloud.
But you're not wrong, right? And
Yeah.
that's like the state of the world for millennials is so interesting because we have lived through how many like once in a lifetime events have we lived through at this point now, right? Like historical events and all this stuff. Like
Yeah.
it's just like there's this certain unrest that is happening right now that is very in one regard it's terrifying because it's like
Mhm.
you don't really know what's going to happen. And there are, again, so many people I know that have been in a career for 10 years now, so to speak, and they're like, oh, like I'm not, I'm still living in a crappy one bedroom apartment, and wait, why can't I buy a house? Because
Yeah.
I can't pass a stress test, but I make triple what I need to make in order to do this.
Mhm.
Like, what do you mean I can't buy a house? What are you talking about? Like I can pay this mortgage 10 times over, even if I get laid off. Like there's so much going on in that realm, and there's so much stresses and anxieties every day for everybody, but also for our generation. Like
Mhm.
it's terrifying, but
And
also you kind of have to just, I mean, that's like you said it, old millennial yells at cloud, like, cause it's just, a lot of us are getting very frustrated because we're just like, you fucking lied to us,
yeah.
like I say all the time, like, I am so grateful and so happy I did not go to college for what I was going to go for at the time because
Which was?
I was going to, so actually, interestingly enough, I was going to go for radio broadcasting.
Ah,
Um,
okay.
which is kind of funny because this whole situation, but I am not a radio person. It's just not my thing. No, I love radio and everything, but it's just not my forte. And at the time I was pissed because I couldn't go.
Mhm.
But it was like, now looking back, I'm like, thank God, because maybe I'd be a producer or something.
Mhm.
That's probably the route I would have went, but I wouldn't be happy doing that. Like
Mm.
I know me, and I'm like, now I need to do physical work. I need to be able to do stuff and run around. And I know I wouldn't be happy in that situation. But there are so many people I know, like you already said, who are in that boat where they're just like, man, like I talk to them, they're like, dude, like I regret going to college for this
Yeah.
because now I'm kind of stuck. Or I'm stuck in this situation where we're just like, you're making just enough, even with a college degree, to
Mhm.
pay your bills, and that's it. There's no getting ahead. And it's like, oh wait, things are gonna just keep getting more expensive?
Yeah.
Like, how is that fair? How is that, like, the world is on fire? What's going on? Like, it's
Now you know why we named that
Mhm.
album "The World on Fire."
Yeah.
But, like, For one thing, I'm just going to also casually sitting there going like a lot of my frustration came from like the generations who came before us are looking at us and our grievances and calling us entitled. And that, you know, you're sitting there going, "Oh, why don't you pull yourself up by your bootstraps?" To the point where like every most of the millennials are just looking at it going, "Are you effing kidding me?" Whereas Gen Z's coming along and they're just like, "Yeah, this is the norm for us." I don't know what you guys, so Gen Z is more developed in terms of overall apathy because this is all they've ever known, whereas millennials were fed a steady stream of lies. And then the moment we say, "Hey, wait a minute, this is crap," the people who fed us those lies look at you and say, "Oh, you're being entitled. You know, it's everyone can do it. How come you couldn't do it?" And so I'm just sitting there going, "What the ever loving crap? This is all BS, and I'm going to start writing stuff down."
Angry millennial yells at cloud. Like, I get
Angry
it, you know?
millennial
Yeah.
yells at cloud. Well, so you brought up your radio stuff. Like I
Mhm,
went to school for Sheridan for broadcast journalism,
mhm.
and I graduated with my program. But ever since I graduated, I could not get in. I could not get past the gatekeepers that were sort of there, even though I've got a lot of stuff to do. And I was sitting there, you know, as a young 20 something going, well, I don't want to walk away from this because if I do, well, then that means I've given up, but I've also let down the people that have trained me. So what is it that I can do to keep this work alive, to improve this work, while also putting a roof over my head? So for, you know, well over a decade, I would take any job I could get, usually low paying, high intense labor positions. And then immediately afterwards, I would come back home and start working on video editing for a YouTube video that I was making. Or I would go and sit there and go, okay, I've got a couple songs that I've made at an open mic. Time to get some band members together. Time to see what I can do to bring these songs alive. Understanding that there's a chance that I will never be able to make a career out of it, but also knowing that the only time I have any sort of, you know, autonomy over my life is when I'm going against the grain and saying, I'm going to do these artsy things that I really love and enjoy, and screw what anyone else has to say. I did what you asked me to do. And now I'm just going to do what I want to do.
Which is a really beautiful thing when you reach that point because
Mm,
a lot of us still haven't reached that point, and they're working these jobs or in these situations where they're just miserable,
yeah.
and they're like, "Well, I have to do this because, you know, this is what you do. This is what I was told you do," and it's like that's the one interesting thing about, about, like, millennial parents who are now have kids who are 18 years old, 19 in their 20s, and they're a lot of them were taught their whole life that, "Hey, no, like, do what you wanna do, like, don't if you can do something you love and make a living at it, like, what an incredible thing to be able to do, right?" Like, and I try to always preach on the show, like, um, even if you aren't making money at it,
Mm,
do what you love. You know what I mean? If it's recording songs and putting it out, if it's, doing a podcast, like, if it's YouTube videos, if it's streaming, if it's crocheting, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. There's this I had someone say to me once, someone who is much older, they asked me once, "Well, why are you doing this podcast?" And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" So, "Well, like, you're not making money at it. You're wasting all this time. Like, I just don't understand why you're doing it. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me." I was like, "Well, why are you watching TV every night for, 3 hours?
mm.
Like, that doesn't make you any money." "Well, that's different. I'm relaxing."
Exactly. This
And
is
then,
how
like,
we
yeah.
relax.
And then he kinda looked at me and was like, "Oh," like, the
Oh.
light bulb went off, and I was
Mhm.
like, it hit me where I was like, "You don't actually like, you were never told this. This was not." It's like, I don't blame that
Mhm.
generation, like my parents' generation and stuff. I don't really blame some of them for that because it's like when you really start to dig into, and this is gone off the rails now and become a whole other conversation. So I want to get back, but it's
Mhm.
like when you start talking to them and really digging into why they believe what they believe and why they think, oh, millennials are entitled. Well, why do you think that?
Yeah.
Well, because my father told me I was entitled because I wasn't willing to work from the age of 11 in a coal mine. It's like, oh. Like,
Yeah, that
and then
kind
you
of makes
start to,
sense.
yeah.
Yeah.
So then it's like, oh, okay. And, I talk a lot about the show recently too, about like emotional maturity and stuff. And like, you talk to, there's the old, oh, millennials are just, they all have daddy issues and stuff. And, they're, oh, my dad wasn't there for me. And, oh, my dad didn't play catch with me enough. And they're like, oh, suck it up. So then now, interestingly enough, millennial parents are almost overcorrecting that.
Mm.
So
Well,
then
most
now you've
most
got Gen Zers who are like kind of, not like they're messed up, but it's like they're like, "Wait, your dad wasn't like that? Like mine wouldn't leave me alone all the time. He was like, 'No, I'm gonna smother you with affection now.'"
yeah.
Like, so it's like and I think it all comes back to a head where it's like there's a certain way you are taught and you are told and you are led by example and how to be and how you should act. And hopefully you have a good role model and hopefully you have people in your life who are supportive because if you don't, unfortunately, it can end badly. But
Mhm.
in a situation like what we're talking about, when you can have that support system and come back around where, hey, this isn't making me money, but I really enjoy doing it, and I can still do this other thing that pays the bills. Like, why wouldn't I do that? Why wouldn't I take that chance? Like, it's so not even a chance. Like, why wouldn't I just do it? Like, what does it
Mm.
matter? You just want to have fun, and if you can then do like what you're talking about, where it's like keep working towards that goal of doing something, whether it's journalism or whether it's music, to then be like, hey, I'm doing what I love and I'm putting a roof over my head with it.
Yeah, pretty much. And for me, I was sort of looking. It was good that you gave the analogy of like, why do you watch TV? Because for me, this is sort of the equivalent of that, but it also is, hey, I'm not just watching other people doing things. I'm actually learning and improving a skill while also doing something that I love that relaxes me. Like if one for me, one of the this is more me socially, but like what is torture for me is if somebody just asked me to come hang out and we're not really doing anything. So it's just like, "Oh, we're gonna, watch TV or come with me to this cottage. We're gonna unplug for a week." And I'm like, "But I want to do something." Matt, you're just supposed to just relax and enjoy yourself. I can't do that. And so
I
I
hear
start
you.
coming apart because I'm like, "Give me something. Let me work on something." And it's like, that's not the point. It's the point for me. So,
Yeah, no, I fully hear you. But even sometimes it's like even if you're just hanging out and talking,
mm.
like for me, I'm like I love doing that because I'm like I'm working on my active listening and okay, what is this person talking about? And it's like
Mm.
you're kind of working on it, but also at the same time I'm sitting there like going, I could be editing right now. Right now.
Exactly.
I could leave the room, get my laptop, come back here, still be hanging out with them and engaging with them while I'm sitting here going, "Oh, that sounds like shit. Let me like
Yeah.
let me cut that part out." Like
So one
it's
of my
just yeah.
friends is currently getting married, and I'm one of the groomsmen for the wedding, and so I'm there, to help him out and get ready for the day. But the entirety of me, helping them out, there's always that negative, like that thought, those invasive thoughts that go into the back of my head going, how long has it been since you created a YouTube video? Or, you really have this extra side project. You need to go onto Craigslist or Kijiji and start putting out ads to get bands, or you got to promote yourself. Get back to Hodder at the Hodder Show and see if he is able to get you on. Like for me, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I'm present, but also in the back of my mind, there's like a million other things that sit there and go, you should probably be working on this, to the point where I can't really enjoy myself.
We are very, very similar in that regard.
Yeah.
It is terrifying to I say this all the time. Um uh, Usually in conversation with my wife, I'm like, it is my blessing and my curse to be a creative person.
Mm.
I need it to thrive. Without it, I tried to not do it and it didn't work. I was just not. I couldn't do it. But then also, when you're sitting having a conversation with your wife and you're looking at her going, yeah,
Mhm.
no, for sure. And just there's
Yep.
a billion different things. And like, she'd just be like, what? Like, what are you thinking? I was like, what do you mean? No, 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 no. I'm present right now. I'm like, what's
I'm
up? What's
here
going on?
right now. No, you're not.
Because
What are you thinking?
yeah, because she knows, okay, just because you're responding to what I'm saying and you're active listening, quote unquote, because I like to use that word a lot.
Yeah.
He's like, that doesn't mean you're actually here though.
Yeah.
She's like, I know when you're not actually here. Like, and I'm just like, fuck. So it's like, it's
Yeah.
finding the balance of that, but also like, oh man, I gotta go to work. Well, I gotta go edit this. I gotta do that. And I think it all comes back to what we're taught. We've been taught you have to work all the time. We got to work 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, and sometimes you got to work weekends, and you got to do this, you got to do that, and
You gotta work 9 to 5, and then when you come back, you gotta work 5 to 9. And
mhm.
I'm just like, "Oh god, please make this stop."
It's like, oh, if you loved work, you're gonna love work too. Like,
Yeah.
it's just, it's,
I picked up live streaming, as well during the pandemic. I went and
mhm.
bought, an upgraded gaming PC, and I use it on occasion to, do, like, video game live streams. And one of the reasons why I'm doing that as well is, A, it gives me B-roll footage for when I make YouTube videos, but also it prevents me from sitting around the house. So even the simple thing of, "Oh, I'm going to play video games," I'm still doing something creative because 'cause I'm engaging with other people. So it's once again, like, there's always sitting there going, "There's a million different creative things that I wanna do," and being creative is a blessing, but also a curse, just like what you explained earlier.
Yeah, that's why I love Discord, because I will even when I'm just hanging out with some of my friends and patrons and stuff on Discord, like I still feel like I'm doing something to
Yeah,
build the brand, so to speak, when I'm just sitting around telling like fart jokes and stuff. Like I'm like, no, I'm building the brand. It's fine. Like, and it's like, no, you're not.
100%.
But it feels like
100%.
I am.
Yeah, yeah.
For sure. Well, let's circle back for a second here.
Yeah, weren't we promoting an
But yeah,
EP
we're
or
supposed to be
something?
promoting an album, and I knew that
It's
was going to happen. Chatting with you, we're that's just,
kindred
it,
spirits.
yeah. Well, at the end of the day, it all comes back to the theme
Mm.
of this EP, which, as you've said, is very much, oh, those, what is it, that meme of the old man from Pawn
Simpsons.
Stars? Those
Yeah.
bastards lied to me. Like,
Yeah,
it's, it's just all millennials once they hit the age of 30. Those
yeah. Yeah.
bastards lied to me.
Well,
Um,
it's yeah. The EP in on itself was just me looking around going, the world that we're living in is on fire, both from a societal standpoint and from a physical standpoint because of some of the emotional, environmental, and systemic damage that was going on at the time. And it was me sort of grappling with the fact that, hey, this planet right now is currently burning and we have the ability to do something about it, but we're kind of powerless to the people that are running the show, the gatekeepers and the legislators and the people that are currently at the top of the pile, who are just like, cool, we know that this isn't working anymore, but we're going to keep doing that because this is what benefits us and we will uphold the status quo. So,
it
fun
works for
times.
us.
It
Yeah.
works for us.
Yeah. So it's no secret that a lot of musicians they're releasing these records and these EPs that they're just angry. Like, and I get it. Like, I really, really get it. And World on Fire is no exception, but there's a lot of really great moments on it. There's a lot of great hooks and melodies and guitar work and instrumentation. Like, there's a lot of stuff to digest and really dig into. So what I want to do now, folks, is we're going to play the EP in full. Then we're going to come back and continue to have a conversation here about the EP and probably 100 other things with Matt. But real quick, I'm going to give you guys the track listing so you know what you're listening to. So there's 6 songs. So the first song we're going to hear is Did You Miss Me? Second song is These Crazy Times. Third song is Broken. Fourth song is Payday. The fifth song is Hand That Feeds. And then the sixth and final song is Rise Up. So right now, I recommend, if you guys aren't listening to this on a pair of great headphones or speakers, pause and go get a great pair of headphones or speakers, because it's also a brilliantly mixed EP, but we're gonna get into that in a little bit. Crank it up right now. This is the brand new EP from WCS, World on Fire.
Did you miss me? Did you miss me? Did you miss me? bag it up and then we'll dash. That's why we are around. How did I get here? Broken, feeding off your fear. When society slips you through the cracks, you have no choice but to attack. That's all you need to know, my dear. Well, I made up my mind, and I respond in kind to a not just world that feels so far away. If you've ever felt wrong, everybody sing along to the chorus of I want my payday now. We've crawled, scraping to get by. No one cares if we live or die. As I don my mask and load my gun, I take my life back on the run with all that money can buy. Well, I made up my mind, and I respond in kind to a not just world that feels so far away. If you've ever felt wrong, everybody sing along to a chorus of I want my payday now. This is the police. Come out with your hands up. With the money in the bag and no one gets hurt. I tried going straight, but only this works. It's not your money I want, it's this. Come on and put it in the bag. God, we trust in all others pay cash, so bag it up and make a stash. Sing it out, know what to say. I want my payday. future, just misery. Is You wanna keep moving, but you're not getting far. Feels like you're drowning. When your friends have left you behind, is it any wonder you've lost your mind? 10 years and counting. Nothing's gonna get through when you're ruled by greed. No one's gonna save you. Then bite the hand that feeds you poison. Bite until it bleeds. To decrease notoriety, become a pillar of society, but you know you're better than that. Blow past the people that get in your way. Don't listen to the games that they play. Everyone else will fall flat. Nothing's gonna get through when you're ruled by greed. No one's gonna save you. Then bite the hand that feeds. Is this what you wanted? Is this what you need? Let's make them feel daunted. Then bite the hand that feeds you poison. In the midst of fuzzy terror, brought on by human error, we examine our misery through the study of history. But it seems that we're not learning while the world is slowly burning. The youth book, false nation, the voice of a generation. Come on. Well, allow me to start before we fall apart. 'Cause it's not really new being lied to. I'm not waiting for the world to end. I'm not waiting for the sun. And I'm not going to pretend everything will be fine. I've had enough. My best years were rough. Time to wise up. It's time to rise up. Leaders unprepared, they should be running scared. From the view where I stand, they got blood on their hands. They called us entitled, let's refuse to be idle. Let these words cut like knives, give us back our lives. Is it We just do what we're told. We're not waiting for the world to end. We're not waiting for a sign. And we're not going to pretend everything will be fine. When the clock counts down, will we make a sound before the hands of fate tells us it's too late? 'Cause we've had enough. Our best years were rough. It's time to wise up. It's time to rise up. They tried to force us down out of sight, underground, acting like they've won, but we've only just begun. No more being pushed aside. We're being told we should hide right here, right now. Let's refuse to bow. Like a ticking time bomb, all will appear calm. Before we ignite and set everything right. We're not being chained by fear. We will persevere. 'Cause like the past, our future is vast. Moment of silence right before the violence. War drums will sound the cry. When the sparks shall fly, there's no time for remorse. We must alter the course. If we dare retreat, we'll be stuck in repeat. Till our oblivion comes, we'll all come undone. Come before eternal night, get up and fight. Take back the life they stole. Save the world and make us whole. Rise up, for it's gone. Fight for a brand new dawn. We'll keep marching on before it's all gone. Rise up.
All right, guys, there you have it. World on Fire by WCS. And real quick to give the track list again that you heard in order, we have the first song you heard, Did You Miss Me? The second song, These Crazy Times. The third song, Broken. The fourth song, Payday. The fifth song, Hand That Feeds. And the sixth song, Rise Up. And of course, we are joined on the Hodder Show Music Showcase by Matt, who is the front man of the band. Matt, killer EP, dude. I really, really enjoyed it. And I think that obviously before we heard the music, we were talking all about kind of what this is and the overall theme of it. And for me personally, I really think that sonically, from a production standpoint, it's really, really stellar. And you guys, like, your production was great before. That's one thing I really dug about you guys. Was like, wow, like, this is really good and clean, but it sounds more of like a rock record style production, which I really, really dig. Is that something that going into it, you guys kind of had that intention?
So, at least in terms of like the songs that we were going to use, the structure of the album, and from a producing standpoint, um, it was sort of really easy to figure out what songs to use because once, as I mentioned before, me and Mikey wanted to do more of a relaxed song. We wanted to make an album that had more songs that were like Broken, whereas Paul and Mario wanted to do more punk, more hard rock type of sounds. When we understood what it was going to be like, immediately right then and there, it's like, all right, cool, we've got this on lockdown. And one of the reasons why the EP works so great is this was mixed and mastered by Paul J. Doran, our guitarist. Before, all our stuff was mixed through other parties. We had Scotty Comer do all the mixing at his studio, and then we would take it to someone else to do the mastering. All of this was mixed and mastered by Paul. And when you have like the band who's played and done these songs over and over again, you know what the album is supposed to look like and listen to. And Paul needed barely any kind of critiques. Like there were sometimes in like Broken where I'd listen to it and go, the guitar is a little too loud. You need to turn it down just a little bit. The vocals need to be a bit more prominent in this section. And once again, it was a great job mixing and mastering by Paul. He really knocked it out of the park, especially because he did some like minor stuff, but this is the first time he did like a major directorial debut. And I will casually say, I'm glad that you enjoy this. At the time of this recording, I have heard these songs an uncomfortable amount of time because I'm also doing all the producing
Yeah.
for online stuff. So sending it out to DistroKid, like, what are the lyrics that are involved in the thing? And I'm like, okay, well, here's the thing. Let me listen to it. And I'm like, wait a minute, the lyrics that I wrote here are very different than what I have in the recording. Time to update it. And I would go line by line by line by line to make sure that everything that you find online matches what I'm singing in the song. So I have heard my voice so many times to the point where I'm just like, I really am sick of this album already.
I totally get it. Like, and it doesn't mean that you don't enjoy what you did and the work.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, I've heard this song, 507 times this week. Well, time for the 508th time.
It's the Wonderwall effect. It really is. Because now I understand how bands can get sick of playing the hits or whatever. And I'm like, I'll be okay if I'm able to go out on stage and perform it. But the entire thing of you're back there and you have to listen to the song over and over and over again just to get it ready for consumption. It is an incredibly draining thing. And I'm just like, I don't hate these songs, but right now I hate these songs. Give me like a week, 2 weeks, and then I am okay to to go on. I need a vacation from the same tracks.
That's what it is. I remember someone telling me a story of how they were in the studio recording a riff that they were just having a lot of trouble with for some reason recording.
Yeah.
He said, I played this riff live 100 times, but like I couldn't record it for some reason. And because of that, and because he was trying to play it over and over again so much, he wanted to change it. He was like, this, I don't like it anymore. But he took a step back and came back and was like, no, this is how it needs to be. So it's interesting to hear that. But as far as talking about the songs, let's go through track by track here. Walk me through Did You Miss Me?
So Did You Miss Me is incredibly personal. It is the one that I think that is the most, well, both that and Payday are the ones that I feel are the most removed from the major focus of World on Fire. But Did You Miss Me is a song that is more about my personal existence within the music industry. And it is me sort of sitting there going, I've been in this for 10 years. I've had to deal with multiple bands collapse down around me, but I'm still here. And I don't know if I'm going to keep doing this years from now, but if I'm going to swing, I'm going to swing for the fences. And so Did You Miss Me once again is a mix of me establishing a mission statement that I'm still here and I'm going to hit you with everything that I got. But also we have that one bridge in the middle of the song where I go fall way down below. The part where it's like really sort of dreamy is kind of a mix of I'm still here. I'm giving it all I got, but also talking about one of my personal fears, which is a fear of, you've done everything that you can, but no one really noticed you. You're screaming into the void type of situation. And it's also an affirmation of, hey, I've made mistakes. I've lost friends in this journey to follow my dreams, to go after things that matter to me, but I'm not afraid of what the future can bring. Sure, there's a chance that I can fail, but this is what I do. I am a musician first and foremost. And if other people don't give a damn, that's fine. Just know that I gave it everything that I possibly could. And that's what Did You Miss Me is primarily about.
It's a really powerful song, and I think for me, I can feel that 100%, even with my own personal journey. So I think that's one reason why I love that song so much. I I think it's a close favorite second song for me on the record. The
Mm,
one song, the reason why it's my favorite song, once we get there, I'll talk about it, is because of one
mm,
specific section.
mm,
But as far as from a lyrical standpoint, overall, I really love this song, and
mm,
I think that I talk a lot about on the show, on the music showcase, about when you listen to an album or an EP, the first song needs to catch you. If all the A&R guys and everything, they always talk about it. A&R people
mm.
always talk about it. You got to hook them right away. You got to, you
Yeah.
can't just, oh, here's the first song and it's like a mediocre, like, not that you should have any mediocre songs on your recording,
Yeah.
but it's like, oh, you're like, oh, we're gonna start the record with a ballad. No, give me
I
a
mean,
riff.
you
Give me.
could do that, but I would never recommend it. You need to have something that'll get the listener focused,
Right.
but it cannot be your heaviest song. The first song needs to have like some intensity, but not enough to the point where you're like bashing them over the head with it. Originally it was kind of like a coin flip to decide whether or not our first song would have been Did You Miss Me or the next song on the EP, which is These Crazy Times. But we decided it was better to do Did You Miss Me, because if we opened with These Crazy Times, it would have felt too much like our original single, which was Show Me the Light. And we wanted to show growth and progression without sitting there going, well, they're just going to the well again, for the exact same kind of sort of feel and vibe to it. And I will also add something, a little sort of story. So Did You Miss Me adds with this weird sort of drum breakdown, the do 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 do, and then wait, and then he does it again. That was all decided by Mario, and it added complexity to the song, but they also ended up kneecapping themselves for live versions of that song, because it's like, yeah, it works really, really well, but now everyone has to be on the exact same page when live. So whenever we performed it, I'm like, my vocals are done. You don't need me to do anything. Meanwhile, Paul, Mario, and Mikey are all looking at each other going, okay, get the timing down. 3, 2, 1, do, 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 end song. And I'm just like, you wanted it to be complex, but you now have a chance that you can screw this up if you do it live, and everyone will be able to know. Um, but yeah, like all of that stuff, it was still a really fun song to do, where I was able to spill my guts out onto the record, and to let it, not be afraid of what other people would think. I'm like, if this is going to be an incredible personal journey, and this is what you need to understand with the rest of this EP. I'm not holding back. I'm giving you me.
Very raw and honest, which I
Mhm.
think as a musician you always need to be. And that's something that is very much, as much as, yes, the CP, as we've talked about, is venting frustration and everything. It's also just, it's being brutally honest with your audience, which is super important. And that's something that obviously you explore a lot on the next track, These Crazy Times. Walk me through that. Obviously, we've talked a little bit already about kind of the general theme of it, but walk me through These Crazy Times.
So These Crazy Times was actually like an incredibly easy song for me to write. And what I mean by that is, sometimes like when we end up writing songs, me and Paul, I'll have like, the first thing I do is I'll find the melody, and then days later I'll sit there and go, okay, what do I want to sing about? What is this music making me feel? It's all, the music has to come first, right? But like, I'm sitting there going, okay, here is the melody, da, 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 da. But I was there one day at his old place. He had a really crappy sort of a apartment that was on Lakeshore near Etobicoke, like right on the waterfront. And we're sitting there and we write two songs out of the gate. The first one, which was like a more mellow jam song, and then These Crazy Times immediately afterwards. And I'm just sort of sitting there looking at him, looking at Paul, and I'm like, wow, we honestly finished 2 songs back to back in like a single afternoon. This feels unhuman to us. But for me, it was really, really simple because I was once again feeling alienated and alone and feeling very odd with watching what I was seeing on the TV, especially as the pandemic was just kicking off. And I'm like, all of this just feels like we're not even on the same world before the pandemic. And sitting there and watching all this anxiety that comes from like the news reports, and I'm like, I can't be the only one who's feeling like this. And a lot of the the hooks, the vocal hooks are talking about, hey, we're all going through this. But also understanding that in the midst of this anxiety and in this chaos, like the hook for it is primarily, um, in these crazy times, the only thing I find is to think with a clear mind. And that is quite honestly, if you're going through incredibly fraught with, you know, incredibly fraught and troubling sort of situations, panicking is not going to make things better. You need to sit there and go, okay, this just happened. What do I do? How do I, get out of this logically, calmly, so that I can sort of deal with these new pressing circumstances? And that is sort of going through that. And then the chorus comes in where I'm actually addressing, it's more I'm addressing a friend, but it could be for addressing the audience. And it's more along the lines of, hey, you're going through some stuff too as well. Tell me what you're thinking, because I can't see, I'm not a mind reader. I know that you're dealing with some stuff, I know that you're sinking, and I can't just sort of let this unspoken sort of thing, like, I know you're dealing with some stuff right now, and I'm not going to let you walk away. Tell me what's going on. If I extend a lifeline to help you to do stuff, you know, are you going to reach back? Will you reach for me? Because I can help you stand. I can help you get through this, but you have to agree to accept my help. And that's the conversation that's going on through the chorus structure of that. Meanwhile, the verse and pre-chorus is talking about the anxiety that I'm going through, letting the audience know, hey, you're feeling this way. I'm feeling this way too. So it's this sort of back and forth conversation between me and whoever the listener is, and understanding, hey, you're going through some stuff. I'm going through some stuff. Tell me what you're thinking.
Exploring the emotions, so to speak, of what I think a lot of people were going through and what I was going through and what you were going
Mm.
through and everybody, it's a powerful thing, but then also the fact of, hey, it's the old adage of, people can't be helped until they potentially accept the help. And, hey, it's like, what's wrong? Nothing, I'm fine. Well, no, you're not. What's up? Like
Yeah.
it's kind of that same adage, which I think is something that we're seeing nowadays is becoming more and more uh, in the norm, so to speak, of people talking about their feelings and being willing to discuss things with their friends and whatnot.
So I'm going to go earlier into the podcast. We were talking about like the problems with being a millennial and how the older generation said just suck it up and toughen yourself up. And I'm like, but I'm not that kind of person. I need to be able to let all my guard down. I want to be able to have an empathetic conversation. And for me, uh, sitting there going, "Oh, nothing's happening." I'm like, "No, that'll lead to high blood pressure, panic attacks, and taking it out on other people." And so as such, I feel like myself, I don't know if everyone else in my generation is like this, but I am much more empathetic. And as such, I'm like, "No, no, no, no. I'm not going to bottle this stuff up. If you want to know what's behind this mask, I'm gonna tell you." And I hope that if I can be upfront and honest about it, you can be upfront and honest about it too, because holding this stuff in is not going to help either me or you. And so it's me sitting there going, okay, time for me to let down the walls. And hopefully you're able to join in on the conversation, to be more empathetic and to be more willing to let other people in.
which I think is, I can agree with you on that. And also I'm very much an empath myself, so
Yeah.
I can understand what's like. Sometimes you gotta just get it out. You don't have, hey, if you're gonna, hey, how you doing? If
Yeah.
it's I'm not good, you're gonna hear about it. It's not
Yeah.
just, it's like, oh well, the polite thing to say is I'm good. What?
Yeah. That's
No, like,
that's the societal expectation. That's
mhm,
what happens when you're on a job. If someone said, if you're working at a cashier and it's just like, "Hey, how you doing?" The job wants you to just say, "Fine, how may I help you?" But, like, if someone's just like, "Hey, how are you doing?" I've always been the type of person where it's just like, "It's been rough." So,
it's been a rough day. It's all you need to
it's
say. Yeah,
yeah.
you can still get it
It's
out, but
yeah.
yeah. I
Um,
literally happened to be in the drive-through last night. "Hey, how's it going?" "Oh, it's been a busy night." "Oh, no. Well, I hope it gets a little easier." "Yeah." It's like, "Oh, well, you're doing a great job. Thanks so much. Like, I
yeah.
really appreciate it." And they're just like, "Oh." Oh.
Yeah.
Like, they feel a little better. It's like, cool. Like, that's good.
Structurally wise, these crazy times, and I mentioned it earlier, reminds me very much of Show Me the Light. When I sit down and I start hearing the opening riff and the build towards the rest of the song, it just feels like, I once again, absolutely love and enjoy the song, but at the same time, I'm like, I could totally see people confusing both songs if you were to play them side by side. And I was sort of sitting there going, "This is old hat for me." I'm worrying if I'm falling back on, once again, going to the well too often, but at the same time, I feel like both songs, even though they have a similar sort of feel to them, have two completely different messages that causes them to be able to separate themselves between the two.
For sure, but also I agree with the fact that, they can still be linked together where it's like, this is classic
Yeah.
WCS, like, they know what they're getting, but then if you opened the EP with this,
Yeah.
it's like, oh yeah, they're going back to the well, so to speak. So
Yeah.
it's cool to be able to still draw from that.
Mhm.
Wow. Hey, whilst it's still being different, it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, this is classic WCS, but we also get something different, which I think is super important. It's important to have to grow as an artist while still not completely changing your sound every record, because that would you listen to your favorite bands if they changed their sound every single record? Probably
Mhm.
not. You'd be like, "Whoa, who's the hell is this band? What happened to?" And it's the old Avenged Sevenfold syndrome sometimes, where it's like, they sound like seven different bands on each record. Like what? Like what? What's? I've heard that
I don't
critique of them
listen
before.
to a lot of Avenged
Yeah,
Sevenfold, but now that you've told me that, I'm like, they switch genres and sound like 7 different bands. Okay. I wanna hear what this sounds like just so that
yeah.
I can
They don't
understand it.
actually do that,
Yeah.
but like I've heard that critique of them before, just as an example. But you mentioned how, going back to the well and kind of still wanting to sound like you guys, while also, obviously, as I said, having growth in that. And one song that I think you really, really hit the nail on the head with that, and also as you've talked about, was kind of more of a direction that you were kind of wanting to see the EP go, is the third song, Broken. And it's a very beautiful song, a lot of dynamics happening, some great bluesy guitar work, which obviously I really enjoy. But then also, man, just to be honest, vocally, I think it's my favorite performance of yours on the record. I love this song vocally from you. So walk me through Broken. I want to hear about it.
So, Broken in on itself was one of those songs where, Paul was playing a riff, and immediately when he heard the riff, I just stopped and I looked at it and I'm like, I know what this song is going to be like. Um, and I was sitting there immediately when he was playing it. It had a very sort of moody, sort of introverted type of thing. And I'm like, I know exactly what this is about. And I started immediately thinking about, how my existence as a creative type has been. And a lot of the stuff that I've done in order to be creative, it comes from introspection, but also an incredible sense of loneliness. Um, I currently go out to a lot of open mics and it's just me. I don't have a lot of friends. The long commutes by myself where I'm just sitting there going, the long lonely nights where you come home and, that's just it. And sitting there and feeling, happy that I'm doing creative work, but also incredibly alone and by myself, and seeing all my other friends that are like, "Oh, we're settling down, we're having families, having kids," but understanding that this is the life that I chose, and that's immediately what I gravitated towards. I started writing about, how I felt going to all these different events, feeling like I'm alone amongst the crowd, enjoying myself, but also going out to these things so that way I don't feel alone. It's weird because, like, if I'm at home, those intrusive thoughts and those feelings of loneliness take over me, and I go out to these events in order to escape those feelings, but also, even though I'm in the midst of it, it also feels very lone going to it and coming back. And so, um, also, there is the understanding of I came out of a really bad relationship that lasted me 6 years, and that relationship had left me in pieces. Like, I noticed huge parts of my personality change differently as a result of that breakup. Some of it was for the better, but also a lot of it is I'm afraid of jumping back into other relationships, and I realized that that breakup has left me a broken person as well. And also being creative and knowing that if I tie myself down to another person, it'll prevent me from being able to go out and do this crazy creative stuff at the same time. So all of that sort of blending into a song, um, was easy for me to do because once again, I was living through that. This song "Broken" is going through my mind and sitting there going, "I wish I had someone in my life who can make me feel less alone, that I can go with and do these things." And also, another thing that I'll bring into it, we had mentioned Discord during the break, actually. I had joined all these Discord communities, and there were all these people that I eventually befriended. I don't know them in real life. They don't know my name. They don't know anything about me, but through the magic of Discord, being able to uh, be empathetic to their plight and them sitting there and telling me about, how they feel alone, how they feel removed from everything, and knowing that, hey, you're not alone. Through the magic of the internet, I'm here, I'm listening, you're valid, you mean something. And sort of all of that going in together, and I'm just sitting there going, oh wow, this is how this song is making me feel. This is the story that I want to tell. Okay, I know what I have to do for this. And everything, like, so the melody that I'm singing in the main verse is almost identical to what Paul is playing on guitar, and I deliberately chose that. And I chose that because the person who's singing the song, me or the narrator, whoever you want to fill in, is not confident about themselves. And just sitting there going, the vocals shouldn't be first and foremost at the top. It almost should sound like it's hiding behind something, and I'm hiding behind the guitar. Um, I got into an argument with Mario Cabral, who was the drummer, because he didn't understand what I was trying to do. He's like, "Hey, man, you're doing the exact same thing as Paul is doing on guitar. You should probably do something to stand out, to make the sound change a little bit more." And I'm like, "I understand what you're trying to say, but there's a legitimate narrative purpose to why the vocal melody is like that. The person, me, I'm insecure. I'm feeling alone. I'm hiding behind other things. I wish that there's someone else there that can, bring me out and make me feel, able to do that." And so that's one of the reasons why the verse is structured like that. The major sort of going into it, the major messages, the "you're not alone" mantra that I'm repeating towards the end of it, for some weird reason, kind of reminds me a little bit of John Lennon. I don't know what it is. I think it's "and they all shine on," where he does the repeat over and over again. For me, I'm just like, the "you're not alone" is very much like that as well. Um yeah, Paul has like 2 different guitar fills that are going into this. Um I I think I've exhausted everything that I can say. Is there anything you want to ask me about this song?
Well, one thing I wanted to ask specifically just about the guitars, as the vocalist, obviously, and I'm so glad you touched on. I'm so glad you touched on the you kind of hiding behind the lead melody vocally, because that's something I picked up on. I was gonna actually ask you about,
Yes.
because I'm a sucker for guitar parts and vocal parts that kind of can merge into one and really complement each other well. But for that song, I think it is so interesting with the guitar, because as the front man, do you kind of just let him off the leash, so to speak, and just go do whatever you think? Do you kind of play a role in helping with him writing the full parts and the lead parts, or how does that usually work for you guys?
So the major thing is that I'm a vocalist first and foremost. I do have experience as a rhythm guitar player, but my experience with Paul is I would sit down and I would listen to him play a melody or a hook on his guitar, and I'll sit there and I'll listen to it and go, okay, how would I what is the melody of this for a vocal thing? And I would sit there and we'd do a couple run throughs right then and there. Sometimes it would connect. Other times I'm like, I don't necessarily know. I need to work on this by myself. But there are parts where I'll sit there and I'll go, okay, this is what I think the vocal melody is. And I'll look at what Paul is playing and I'll go, okay, this part that you're going to transition into it, it needs to work with this vocal melody. And this is where I think the song is going to be. This is where I think it's going to work with. So I give him like a little bit of foundation as to how the music is making me feel and what I want to do vocally, and he creates the guitar parts around that sort of feedback, that back and forth. Um, when it came to Broken, once again, he was playing that, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to sing it like this. But then as he's playing other parts, the for example, the "You're Not Alone," like I'm going with it, but I'm also adding more on top of it. There have been times where I let Paul like go absolutely nuts, but it is primarily a conversation between me and him in trying to craft an appropriate song. For me, it's very much like assembling IKEA furniture. Like you have the parts in front of you. It's about putting those parts together and also sitting there going, okay, well, this seems like it's the right piece, but these measurements are kind of off. Do you mind if I take this part and like sand it down a little bit, or if we can extend it and being able to work off of that?
Finding where these parts fit. It's like a chess match sometimes too. It's like, okay, well,
Kind of,
this needs to go here, and this needs to go here. Then I do this, and then cool, I win. Like
yeah.
it's your end goal is, and there are lots of great artists out there who you can be the best vocalist in the world, the best guitarist in the world, but sometimes you need each other to
Yeah.
structure a song. And okay, this goes here, this goes here. It's knowing where to put things and what to do in certain situations, for sure.
Yeah. For all of our songs, like, well, all of our songs, but most of our songs up to that point were originally done acoustically. I would show up at Paul's place, he'd have an acoustic guitar and do stuff like that. For this EP, it started to involve the rest of the band where it's like, hey, I've got this part, and this is while we're in a rehearsal factory that whereas I show up at Paul's place and we have an unlimited amount of time, uh, for the rehearsal stuff, it's more along the lines of, okay, well, let's Mario would add a little bit more, Mikey would add a little bit more, but also sort of sitting there going, "Okay, well, we have a very limited time because now we're at this rehearsal factory for 2 to 3 hours, and let's get this made in this time that we possibly can." With, Broken, we have a bridge at the beginning of the song, which kind of leads into Paul's first guitar solo, the "My heart this feeling," like that part of the song, that was not originally added to the track. That was added, probably 1 to 2 weeks after Paul had the base foundation of it, and he's just like, "I wanna add more to it," and I'm like, "Okay, well, this changes how the structure of the song is," because when he was playing that guitar part, I was sitting there going, there's romantic elements of this. So now the person that I'm speaking to saying, "Hey, you're not alone," while I'm sitting there going, "Okay, well, to some degree, maybe the person that I'm speaking to, I have feelings for. We're like romantic attachment to them." So that's where it all kind of like it as the music gets added, we add more vocally and we change somewhat the message of the song. And once again, because the person is very insecure or I'm very reserved or feeling very vulnerable in this song. The I love you part, I don't even say I love you, I say I love, and then it just rings out because I don't have the courage to say that, but you can already tell this is what they were trying to feel, and that goes into the guitar solo as well. So vulnerability, and incredibly raw. This song is an anthem for people that are feeling alone in the universe, but also letting them know, hey, I'm also in that as well. So I'm also going through that. And if I'm going through this, even though you do feel alone, you're not alone because I'm here for you type of situation.
Beautiful, really a really killer song, man. I absolutely love it. And it's interesting the dynamics of the EP because we go from this song that you're very vulnerable and raw to a
Yeah,
song that is, to me, polar opposite of that, which
it
is
is.
Payday, which I'm just going to tell you what I from what I gather from it, it's a
Okay.
story about someone who is at the end of their leash, so to speak, or the end of their rope, and decides they're going to rob a bank, and the feelings that comes along with that. How am I?
Yes.
I'm pretty close.
You are nailing it on the head. I try my best not to have ambiguity. Like I want to tell a story, but one of the things that I've had for a while is I really do to some degree romanticize bank robbers. Like Don Dillinger, for example, or like heist movies. And the song "Payday" is based upon the video game of the same name. I was playing a crap ton of Payday 2, and they had like a little bit of a web series, but like I'm sitting there and I'm playing through this one character called Hoxton, and I'm looking at it going, well, I've always wanted like once again the societal expectation of you at this age you should have money for a wife, a house, a picket fence, and I'm like, I'm not dealing with any of that. I'm living in a rented flat. I can barely afford rent. I can barely afford groceries. If and if I'm not able to do this after playing their games, well, screw it. I want to rob a bank and get the life that they lied and said that I could get. Um, and so that's was the nature of this. Like Paul started playing a riff and I was just sort of sitting there going, I don't know how the song is going to be because I didn't know it was going to be about this until Paul starts playing the bridge, the do. So he's playing that and immediately he has the stop and the first thing that came out of my mouth is put the money in the bag and no one gets hurt. And I stopped and I looked around and I'm like, that's what this song is going to be like. All right. So we have someone who's going to rob a bank. How do we get here? What gets them into this position? And I started sitting there going, okay, we need to start peeling layers back behind this narrator. Why are they robbing a bank? And how do they feel? And the verse sort of goes into that. It's like, you know, they're in the session, they're sitting there going, get down on the ground, no one make a sound. Um, and we're only here for the cash, bag it up, make a dash. That's why we're around. And then they start letting some of their masks slip a little bit because he's addressing the listener, how did I get here? A broken person who's feeding off your fear. And it's basically them sort of explaining a little bit, but not giving the entirety of the game away. Understanding that, hey, they've lived an existence where they've crawled, scraping to get by. No one gave a damn about them. And this is their only way of being to take their autonomy back is just sitting there going, hey, I did everything that you want. And now that didn't work. Well, guess what? I'm going to live the way that I want to live. And in order to live that way, in order to have an existence where I can actually do more than just barely survive. I'm now going to rob people. And I was sitting there going, well, it's not just stealing from people. It's more, I was sitting there going, like, if they were to rob a bank, it would probably be something that is insured by the state, to go after an insured bank, because then you're not actually robbing from other people. It's the insurance companies, and the insurance companies, because they're all leeches and parasites anyway. So I'm just sitting there going, okay, this person, there's some method to the madness. It is madness, but at the same time, I'm like, I get where they're coming from. And that was the modus operandi. Once again, this is an incredibly playful song, and for me, the part where it becomes fun is the doot 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 and the break. Immediately when we start going into that, I'm like, oh, we're gonna have some fun now, because like it's drab, it's dreary, it's raw going into it, but there's no playful element before that. You're just sitting there going, okay, well, we're getting another sort of character study, and I was sitting there going, we need to have some fun with it, because I feel like this song is going to be like, it's not going to be a song that people will listen to unless it's got a fun element. And then Paul added that part. And then I didn't know that he had done this, because it primarily, after he does the put the money in the bag, it kind of goes back into the guitar. But Paul sent me what the instrumental was, and it included this really fun, almost cosmic keyboard part that I had never heard before. Like, we have never, like, if you were to hear the recordings of it live, you would say, wow, that actually is different. But Paul's inclusion of that keyboard part adds other elements that make the song way more transformed than what it was. And I am so glad that me and Paul were able to sync up. And I'm like, oh, he's doing some stuff now. He's adding more to it, and I'm really liking what he's doing. I feel like it's elevated a song that I would have looked at and said, I probably wouldn't. This is probably a fun live song, but I don't understand why this song would show up on the EP. But thankfully, Paul managed to make it that fun joyride, while also allowing me to do a character study on this person at the same time.
It's interesting to in the placement of where it is on the EP, because I definitely feel like after a song like Broken, it's like you kind of need a bit of a let me up, right?
Yeah.
And like, second I heard the first verse, I was like, oh, okay, like we're gonna have some fun, which is that's just awesome. I love it.
And so one of the things that I because the EP is structured the way it is, there is no other way that I could have had it structured, because the other two songs, Hand That Feed and Rise Up, are incredibly dark and would have felt way too jarring. So I'm like, we need to have something that's a little bit more fun to do so. And once again, the affirmation of, when we go into the chorus, it's, I've made up my mind and I'll respond in kind to a world that feels so far away. And, going back to the audience, he's saying, if you have ever felt wrong, or felt wronged, whether by society or life in general, sing along, I want my payday now. You're taking your life back. For him, taking his life back is unfortunately robbing a insured bank, but like also just sitting there going to everyone else, it's like, I'm not the only one who feels screwed over by life. You feel screwed over by life. Put on your mask. Let's go rob some banks together. It's time to take back the life that they stole from you. And that's the fun and enjoyment from it.
It's kind of like relating to the villain in a movie in a way too. I really, really dig that, because it's like the best villains are the ones that don't think they're doing anything wrong. Or in a scary situation, the villains, you go, yeah, he's right. What does that make me like?
So there's I don't know if you ever watch it, but there's Some More News, which is hosted by Cody Johnston, and he did a great version of this where he was talking about Marvel movies, where it's just like, hey, there are some people, like, for example, Killmonger, who's just like, hey, Wakanda shouldn't be hiding. We should be out in the open, and we should be a world international superpower. And I'm like, yeah, he's got a point. And then the Marvel writer immediately panics, going, great, we've made this really good sort of like ideological point that makes sense, but now how do we make it so that the audience doesn't completely side with them? Um, let's make him randomly start killing people for no reason whatsoever. And that now causes the audience to go, well, he had some points, but now he's gone and killed random people, and I can't equate with that. And I'm like, no, 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 you shouldn't have done that, because now all these movies are upholding the status quo when presented with another option that actually might have worked. And so that was my major focus, is I wanted to make Payday be a relatively fun song, but at the same time I'm like, this guy is a villain, but you can see where he's coming from, and it's just like, you know what? He's got a point. I can rally behind this thing. Yeah, like how he's going about it is not how I would go about doing stuff, but I get it. And that's what I wanted to focus on with Payday.
Well, and even on that note, it's something that you kind of, in a way, continue to explore for the
Mhm.
rest of the EP, moving into the next song, which is actually my favorite song on the EP because of one section. You're probably going to guess what section I'm going to talk about, but
We're gonna
Hand
see.
That Feeds is a very powerful song. Obviously, goes without saying.
Mhm.
But for me, and I want you to obviously break down the whole song for me, but I'd be remiss if I didn't start off by saying
Mhm.
that bridge breakdown section is like, I wasn't expecting it musically, as far as from a structure of like just what I had heard so far in the EP. But then to have that build up, that kind of like throwing in a bunch of different notation, I'm kind of like, wait, what? It almost felt like boss music, like leading up,
Mm.
building up boss music, and then it goes into the bridge, and it's like, oh, dirty in the best way.
So Hand That Feeds is a really interesting song for me. And what I mean by that is it's a song that I feel is very unpolished. And this is very weird because, once again, Rise Up immediately follows that. How do you go how do you say that it's unpolished? But there are parts of it where I'm just looking at and I'm like, I kind of wanted to change little bits and pieces, but the structure at least was there. Um, and w- Hand That Feeds is something that had been stewing in the back of my mind. But once again, I'm very easy when it comes to the songs that I write. It's very easy for me to talk about things that I'm thinking of, list of grievances. And I was in a very dark place in my mind because, once again, I had just been officially laid off at the start of the pandemic. And I was watching the world tear itself apart. And I was looking at myself and I'm like, I'm in my late 20s now. I had planned to, have some type of creative sort of success. And at this point, to start slowing down with the creative pursuits, get myself a wife, get myself kids, family, stuff like that, and realizing that it was BS. I didn't plan on writing this song until I was at a gig with Alex Rose, who was our photographer. And I was just sitting there going, "Hey, Alex, how goes?" And she was telling me about how her life did not turn out the way that she wanted. She's a fantastic concert photographer. She started up her own film studio, her photography studio in Hamilton. Took out a bunch of loans, was working at like grocery stores and stuff like that, and trying to live the dream. And then lo and behold, that dream ended up crashing and burning. She had to sell the photography studio. Now has a massive amount of debt and is back working like low paying jobs and stuff like that. And I'm just sitting there looking at her and listening to her vent and sitting there and understanding it's like, you know, we creative people went to school because we were fed the societal expectation of going and if you go, you graduate, you get your diploma, you can get a job in whatever field, but you got to apply yourself and you got to focus entirely on what that was. And so Hand That Feeds was me just sitting there going, all the societal expectation and all the societal pressure and what society has told us on how our lives should be is absolutely 100% bullshit. And being able to fight through that. The first verse even talks about that. Did you graduate and get a degree but have no future, just misery? Like, it was me looking at all these highly educated and well-focused creative people that have drive, have ambition, that can run laps around the people that are currently in their field but have nowhere to go, because it's not just about having the skills that pay the bills. It's sometimes just dumb luck in knowing the right people. And Hand That Feeds is a consistent fight in regards to that. I'm sorry. I'm burning. I'm burning myself out through talking about it, because once again, it feels like I'm screaming at the clouds. But that's very much what the song is about.
Mhm.
But it also, while it is talking about the creative stuff, it also is political as well. I go into the chorus where I say, nothing's going to get through if you're ruled by greed. If no one's there to save you, then bite the hand that feeds you poison. Bite until it bleeds. Well, that part of the song is more political in the sense of, I am left leaning, bordering on socialism. And it comes from, well, all the people that are lawmakers and legislators are there to uphold the status quo because it benefits them, and they're not going to do anything that benefits the fellow common man, because there's no money and no profit motive into it, right? There's no ethical consumption under capitalism. So it's all about, cool, let's line our pockets and make sure that we have the systems that we have, because we don't know what new systems are going to be like, and this system benefits us, so let's go and keep upholding the status quo, even though we have to deal with the fact that, hey, we're now dealing with a massive housing crisis that's coming up. There are people that can't afford to pay the bills, can't afford to look after their families. Even though we told them this lie, we have to keep, following this example that we've dealt with, even though we know that it is BS for people that don't come from where we come from. um I'm trying to think. I'm trying also to think. The second verse, the world keeps spinning, but you're stuck where you are. You want to keep moving, but you're not getting far. It feels like you're drowning. That's 100% me. I've been in music, I've been doing creative stuff, trying to get my head in, trying to get through the gatekeepers, and it feels like I'm stuck. And looking around at everyone else and sitting there going, "Hey, they didn't follow their dreams, but they're getting at least closer to where they want to be in life." And it felt like all my friends are going off and doing all these other things, and it feels like I'm being left behind, and I'm tearing my hair out, going absolutely crazy, um, because I've been stuck doing this for 10 years. Um, have I addressed the part that you're looking for, or do you still want me to go further into the
No,
song?
you hit the nail on the head. But I think for me too, one thing I wanted to mention, like with what you're discussing, there's a lot of like as we've mentioned already a bunch in this, there's a lot of frustrations, but then also like so many. I mean, I'm very much in the same boat. It's like you think, during the pandemic, I was actually able to get a job I've been trying to get for a long time.
Mm,
And I was so excited. And I mean, I was in my car, like bawling my eyes out, 'cause I was like, "Oh, my life's gonna change now. I have this job." And then here I am 2 years later, and I'm like, "Oh, I'm laid off now and
mm,
don't have a job." And I'm like, "Oh, what what? This was supposed to be better. This was supposed to be okay."
yeah.
I thought that this was it's I think a lot of people where the frustration comes from too, that comes back to being lied to, is,
Mm,
well, we think that if you just work hard,
mhm,
everything's gonna be okay.
yeah.
And the reality is that that's not it's a depressing line of conversation, but it's reality.
Mhm,
You can work. I was working last year. God, I was doing 7 days a week, you know, sometimes I don't even know how many hours a day, but and like even then still it was like just barely. And I was like, but I can't work any harder. I can't work anymore. So
Mhm.
why are they telling me? It was like when the pandemic happened and everything shut down. I'll never forget. I wish I knew his name, but the person who said basically everyone in the entertainment industry needs to get a real job.
Mm.
I'm obviously butchering the quote, but that's what he said. He was like, "Well, you guys need to learn some new skills and get a real job." But then you went on that person's Twitter and he was like sharing all this like stuff that was in relates to media. So, well, that's the same industry, bro. Like
Yeah.
it's the same thing. Do you like music? Of course. Well, that industry's gone. If you want us to get a real job, hey, do you like the logo that you use for your campaign? Of course, I love it. Well, that industry's gone. Like, what are you talking about?
You can be a hypocrite while
Mhm.
also making some pretty good points.
Yeah, it's like it's crazy to think about that, and that's why I think it's such a powerful statement. The whole like bite the hand that feeds, because it's like you're being fed these lies, but then also they're like, oh well, no, guys, it's going to be okay. But then also turn around and you're just
Yeah.
so full of shit
Yeah.
that it's like, what are you talking about? Like,
Yeah.
what?
If
No,
if the
like,
hand that feeds is feeding you poison, like, maybe you should stop taking what it's giving you. Maybe you should rebel until it's sitting there going, "Oh, okay, we're gonna stop doing that." And that was sort of the feeling of the song. It's fighting against societal expectation,
mhm,
fighting against society in general. Um, Thinking back on it, because one of the things I was sitting there as I was sitting there and as I'm talking, I'm also I have Hand That Feeds playing next to me, and I was just sort of looking at it going, "What was it about the song that I generally felt was unfinished?" And when we were playing this song live, it works perfectly well because what I do when I play the song live with the rest of the band is Paul goes into this one bridge where it goes did it did it did it did it like it's going to it, and then I go break it down and then it goes there. When we do this song live, what I do is I grab the mic and I do crowd work with the audience, and I basically go, "Hey, hey, hey!" Like I'm doing that screaming and hand waving to the audience, and it works really great as a live song. Um, but you can't really convert that to a studio setting. And so I was sitting there with Paul, and I'm like, I don't know what I can do on a record that will equate to the equivalent of everybody come on, join me. Hey, hey, hey. You can't really do like that kind of chant converting from a CD. And that's one of the reasons why this is a great live song. Absolutely fantastic live song. But it's one of the songs that while I am hitting those points, I don't know if this would have been a song I would have put on the record if not for the fact that Paul and Mario wanted to go down this hard rock and punky song. It's a song that is great live once again, but to me, I feel like there are parts of it that are incomplete. That part that I'm just like, there needs to be something there before the break it down moment. And then after the break it down, everything else perfectly fine. But I'm like, my songwriting part in the back of my head is like, there needed to be something. I
it's because
just
you
don't
know
know.
what could have been there in a certain environment.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I feel you for sure, but I think it's a really powerful song, and you mentioned a second ago about even though you feel like there's some stuff that's maybe unfinished, it still hits the nail on the head as far as what you set it to do lyrically, but also going from that into the next song, which is the final song on the EP, Rise Up,
Mhm.
which is literally you mentioned a second ago about kind of fighting against what we've been told, and the whole live going the whole like hey, hey,
Yeah.
I think that leads beautifully into Rise Up, which is
Mhm.
literally that.
Exactly that. Yeah.
In a very powerful statement that is also very much I was listening to this in my car, and next Rise Up comes on, and after like the first 30 seconds, I'm like, oh, okay, like,
Mhm.
whoa, all right. But also it's like, well, what was I surprised? Because it's building to this. It's
Mhm.
building. It's almost like this is like loosely like a concept EP.
It
Like
is.
it's
It
like
very much
building,
is.
building, and then it's just like, let's go. Let's rise up.
So the major thing that comes with me and Paul as songwriters is my background. I would show up and go to open jams. And doing the solo thing is okay, but I'm very limited in terms of what I can compose as a musician, as a songwriter. Like I write, do some very basic guitar stuff, and so I would show up to these open jams just so that I can play with musicians who have versatility, that have a wider sort of understanding sonically. And so I would start with, they would just start jamming, and then the rest of the music would sit there and go, okay, the guitarist is playing that, the bassist is playing that, the drummer is playing that, and they're all sort of bleeding into and it's all starting to come together. Sure, it's a jam, but it now looks like it's music. Cool. I'm a singer. How do I how do I sync up with everyone else from a jam setting? And for me, that's how I gained the skill of, cool, where's the melody in this? Cool. Now that I have the melody, try to craft a story right there live on the floor while you're jamming with all these musicians. And that comes to the versatility of this. I was sitting there, and this song is completely out of left field for me because I'm not actually singing, I'm rapping. And Paul and Mario and Mikey were in sort of the rehearsal factory. And Paul originally started with the first riff at the very beginning, the do 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 do, and he had been playing that for a while. And Mikey eventually caught suit of it, and they started working together on this, and Mario eventually caught wind of this and knew what it was from how the song was going to be composed and from a production standpoint. And I immediately sat there and I was just looking at it going, I have no idea what I'm going to do for this song, but everyone else is synced up. Everyone else knows their parts, and I'm just like, they're going to leave me behind in the dust unless I'm able to completely change how I create this song. And so I was sitting there and I was listening to a recording, probably on my iPhone, of Mario's drumming. And I'm sitting there and I'm sitting there and looking at it going, "Oh, I'm not singing this. This is a punk song. This is Rage Against the Machine." Oh, and immediately when I understood what the song was, I was smashing through doors because I'm just sitting there going, cool, I finally figured out what I'm going to do for this song. Now that I know what I'm going to do for this song, I need to figure out, okay, what am I going to tell? How am I going to tell it? And I'm sitting there going, well, this is like, because once again, everyone else is doing all these parts and the vocals immediately has to take off out of the gate. I'm saying a lot of syllables. I'm rapping. I'm screaming. I'm fighting against the system. I have to take charge first and foremost. And I have to make sure that I am on point every time, because if I, run out of breath, if I deviate a little bit, it can completely derail the entirety of the song. This song needs to be a focused cannon blast out of the gate, and I have to maintain that energy the entirety of the time. If you see me perform this song live, I'm able to do this song, but I'm giving it every ounce of energy that I possibly can, to the point where sometimes I lose my voice at the end of the song. The take back the life you stole. I'm saying that and it's just like, wow, Matt's run out of oxygen. This song in on itself, once again, was me angry, angry to the nth degree. I was sitting there looking at once again how we had gotten into this point where there was environmental disasters. combined with people dying of a pandemic that could easily be avoided if, we looked at it and said we should give people money, we should tell people to stay home, we should make it so that way people that are in these like high impact jobs that are deemed essential actually get paid as essential workers rather than giving them lip service. And it was me, sort of the first verse: in the midst of unseen terror brought on by human error, we examine our misery through the study of history. Right? What we're doing right now is stuff that has been going on for years and years and years and years and years. And the people that are in charge just saying,
Oh, well, if only there was something that we could possibly do to get us on the right course of history. Oh, well, that's just capitalism.
and understanding like it seems that we're not learning from the mistakes of the past. We keep following down these exact same stupid goddamn roads. Um, it, and as most people, like, we know the youth, the young people, the youth are looking for someone, anyone to step forward and to give them an option. And in my incredibly vain attempt of being the voice, the message of this album, I'm like, all right, cool. Well, I'm going to step forward now as someone who has something to say. I don't know if I have the answer, but I'm going to go and say this. Because I'm sitting there going, allow me to start before we fall apart. Like, allow me to say this, or else, everything that we know is going to fall down around us. And I would rather be someone who's able to air my grievances while I have the time to do so. Because it's not really new being lied to. And that is, me just sitting there going, this is par for the course. And I'm sick and tired of, you giving us window dressing. We need absolute change. We need it now. Because right now we're facing a climate crisis where it's like, hey, we need to stay clear of fossil fuels. We need to stay clear of production and stuff like that. Cool. But the normal, average, everyday people in life contribute very small percentage compared to the manufacturing process that goes into the system that we're currently living. What you are able to contribute in terms of your green footprint is nowhere near as devastating to the world as, say, a steel manufacturing plant or the people that deal with fracking and stuff like that. We're dealing with all this environmental crisis because of what's currently going on in our society, and we need to do something to change that. I'm not waiting for the world to end. I'm not waiting for a sign, and I'm not going to pretend that everything's just going to be fine. We need to change something. We need to change it now, and we need to rise up, because if we don't do something, if we don't be more engaged, if we don't, focus on our climate, if we don't focus on, hey, things are really messed up, and if we don't do something to look after our fellow man, there's going to be no world for anyone to live in. Yeah, so that was just the first verse in on itself. I'm trying to I'm so focused right now. I'm so buzzed that I've actually forgotten the second portion of the song. So give me a second. Give me a second. I'm listening to the track. Okay, cool. So the next part was leaders unprepared. They should be running scared. From the view where I stand, they've got blood on their hands. They called us entitled. Let's refuse to be idle. Let these words cut like knives give us back our lives. When I was writing that particular line in particular, um, it was a mix of sorry, I'm once again, I'm getting wrapped up into it. But when I was writing that line in particular, it was hearing these news reports of how many people are dying around the world due to COVID-19, the measures that need to be taken into place, but knowing that we can't do anything because people still got to go out and pay the rent. If you are sick and injured, you can't really afford to stay home. They eventually started giving out money for people. It's like, hey, if you're sick, here, stay at home. We'll give you cash. We'll look after it. But in the very beginning of the pandemic, it's very much, oh, well, if you don't go to work, you can't afford to live in wherever you are, and you're going to be thrown out on your ass, which causes the virus to further spread from person to person. Um, and it's also, once again, like, businesses are very are very cutthroat. They'll sit there and go, "Oh, you're sick? Well, I don't really care. We have our bottom line to protect." And it was a mix of that, as well as at the exact same time that that was going out, I had heard of the residential charter schools that they started finding the bodies of dead Native kids. So as a result of that, it was a kind of a mix of being angry at our government for, the bodies that they're throwing, the sitting there going, oh, a certain amount of people can die in order to keep our society running, as well as the historical implications of the residential schools. These were Canadian citizens. They were natives, but they're still Canadians, and you let them die because you viewed them as savages and less than. Um, the second breakdown of the song, once again, where I'm going there going, we're not waiting for. So I switched from I to we. So I'm now addressing the other person's, like, we're not waiting for the world to end. We're not waiting for a sign. We're not going to pretend that everything's going to be just fine. You know, our lives have been completely and utterly decimated by overwhelming events through history, whether that is financial crises, whether that is systemic racism, whether that is climate catastrophe, and the COVID-19 pandemic. All of us are living through these historical events, and we are really goddamn tired of living through these historical events. These events that didn't happen to our parents' generation. Not really. Like, what did they have to really suffer from other than, well, they did have to suffer through the AIDS crisis, as well as Ronald Reagan, the Gulf War. Okay, well, but I was sitting there looking at this going, this is all kind of BS that they're subjecting to us. And if we don't change what we've been doing for decades and decades, things are going to get really, really bad. Um, I go into, as the clock counts down, will we make a sound before the hands of fate tells us it's too late? I'm talking about the doomsday clock. I'm talking about humanity's, existence. How many more minutes do we have where we've done nothing before the entire world is completely obliterated? Um, uh, and me just sitting there going, society in general has looked at the younger generation. We were talking about how they were saying millennials are entitled. They tried to force us down, out of sight, underground. Oh, millennials are young, they're entitled, they're not worth your time, type of situation. But it's me just sitting there going, hey, remember when they started talking crap about us? Trying to force us out of sight, underground, acting like they've won, but we've only just begun. Um, it's me just once again raining haymakers down upon the people that were in charge, the older generation who said, "Oh, we're not doing anything." Well, we're not the ones who ran the entire world into the ground. We're not the ones who started the subprime mortgage crisis. We're not the ones who, basically caused the pandemic to spread. We're not the ones who have made it to the point where people have to take these incredibly low paying jobs, and if they don't do that, then they have no chance of being able to survive and scrape by, as well as people not even being able to settle down, raise a family, have kids because they can't afford it. I'm living right now with two roommates that are in the other room that I think are still in the apartment right now, who are listening to my vitriolic speech. But they pretty much are a married couple. But the thing that is preventing them from doing that is they don't have the finances to settle down and get married. I keep hearing them talk about, oh, I'd really want to raise kids, and I really want to get married and to do stuff, but we can't do that because we don't have the money or the resources capable of doing that. And it's from me sort of looking around going, hey, you lawmakers, hey, societal expectations, you've told us this huge chunk of crap, and if you do not do something about it, so God help me, we're going to rise up and we're going to make you terrified about us. Um, I will casually say this song, once again, it came from a place of supreme hate and vitriol and wanting to right societal changes. Then January 6th happened, and this song now takes on a drastic new meaning because I'm like, oh, you could have someone who listens to this song and it could be equated to that. It could be equated these people that were doing a violent overthrowing of the Capitol as them trying to take their country back. And I'm like, oh, there is a very fine line between what exactly you're trying to do. And you can make the argument of, well, those people are doing the exact same thing that you're mentioning about in your song. And I'm like, yes, but also at the same time, they're not it's not going to be implementing things that will change and make our lives better. It's not going to be for making environment like doing some environmental policies so that way, hey, this world can get a little bit more renewable. Hey, we're not following the likes of a demagogue who's going to basically turn this into a dictatorship. It's for me, once again, I'm extremely left wing, but like I was looking at it from the perspective of we need to make the people that are in charge change. And if they're not willing to change, we need to force them to change. And also looking at the understanding of, hey, you could use this message for the other side of the political spectrum and use it for people that are basically trying to do a violent coup, because the message could be very, very similar, but also realizing that, hey, uh you need to actually make the world better for everyone rather than a select few, because otherwise you're just damning the entire world again. So I'm conflicted about Rise Up, as well as, this is me coming from a place where I'm airing out my grievances and being incredibly angry with how the world is currently on course, and saying, hey, we need to change something because if we don't, we're fucked. Huh.
It's very similar to, a conversation I heard D. Snyder from Twisted Sister talk about, where he discusses at length. I wish I knew what interview it was with, because I'd love to quote it. But if you guys go on YouTube and just type in D. Snyder talking about "We're Not Going to
Yeah.
Take It," I'm sure it will pop up. It was a fantastic interviewer, because the interviewer asked him, "How do you feel about 'We're Not Going to Take It' being used for some of these like severe far right wing nut jobs who are, we're not going to take it. You're not going to take our guns and like,
Yeah.
it's like." And by the way, folks, I'm not saying that everyone who believes in gun reform is a dumb redneck.
Yeah.
Go back on that for
Yeah.
a second. It's like not gun reform. You know what I'm saying? Anyway,
Yeah, I get
I'm not
what
a political
you're
person.
laying down.
And he was like, I didn't realize that was going to be a thing. Like, he was just like, he hates the fact that some people use this song for that particular reason. He says, this isn't a song that's a vehicle for hate.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not how the people see it. With everything, and we're not going to discuss it any more than what I'm about to say, just because I don't want to. But with everything that happened in Ottawa, that was like the anthem for all that. And he was like, what the fuck? Like, that's not what that is about. But that's how they took it. And it's finding a balance of, it's almost like when you put your art out into the world, it's subjective, right? And you may not see things a certain way, but someone could take the message and run with it. And even if they're completely wrong, it's finding peace with the fact that, hey, you know what? I said what I wanted to say. I did what I needed to do. it's out there. But at the end of the day, it's a powerful song, and it's a call to arms for not just people who may disagree with the state of things politically, but also just the state of the world in general, regardless of what side of the conversation you're on. Well, I think we can all agree that there's some pretty messed up stuff going on, you know, and something needs to change. And I think that it's important to have conversations like that, and to have songs like this, like Rise Up, and like songs like the whole EP really in itself. World on Fire is a statement in itself that is extremely powerful and was so well done in the grand scheme of, you're not shoving these messages down people's throats, but you're voicing your anger and you're voicing your frustrations. And I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head with it. And it's interesting because as we are winding down here, it's almost kind of bittersweet as I'm saying this, because as I know, and that we're obviously going to talk about,
Yep.
this is a really important EP for WCS, but also as of this juncture, it's going to be the only EP for the band.
Yeah, and that was sort of the heartbreaking thing. We had talked about earlier before we even started rolling, is that I'm the type of person who sees steps ahead. And I had made a lot of plans that were supposed to go into 2023, which unfortunately are no longer going to happen, that are completely taken off the table because the band is no longer together. Um, Not all bands can survive the recording process, and I guess I might as well tell a little about it. We'd finished the recording long since then. Paul was doing the mixing and mastering. Um, Mario, our drummer, had joined another band, which I'm going to remain silent for the respect of them and the group. But Mario was already playing in WCS, and he was also playing in another band at the exact same time. And I'm like, something's going to give, and I knew something was going to give. Um, I did not want to be the main person in charge. I was kind of hoping that everyone else would be able to step up and do stuff. So my responsibilities for WCS was, I co-wrote the songs. I was the lyricist. I booked all the concerts, and I did all the social media. And I was hoping that other people would be able to step up and do things. And we'd had a conversation in August about how things needed to change. Otherwise, I'm going to get burnt out, and I can't do this anymore. And I laid that out on the table. Mario joined this other band, which we sat down and we listened to them perform. And I'm like, they're not bad. They all kind of look the same, but that's kind of the vibe as well. Cause Mario really stuck out in this group. We all kind of were misfits. The only people that really kind of sort of felt like they belonged were me and Paul. And even then, Paul and I, while we are cut from the same cloth, we're both punks. We're both on completely different sides of the spectrum in terms of, I'm left leaning agnostic socialist. He's right conservative Christian. Um, and so Mario joined this other group, and Paul and I had a acoustic show that was going to go down at a place called Tonight Live Happenings Bar, which I think took place on November 26th. And Mario got very upset over how I promoted it. And I looked at him and I'm like, well, I'm not really a promoter. I've asked you multiple times, are you capable of, you know, taking the position, because I know how great you are with Instagram. And he never really stood up. And when I made that post on November, I was working a part-time sorry, I was working a full-time job. So I was on the floor. I didn't see the Facebook chat blow up, but um I received a message from Mikey saying, "Hey Matt, just want to let you know, uh what Mario was saying was coming from an emotional place. It wasn't very logical. I feel like he was just trying to find an excuse. And I saw that show up on my phone. And I'm like, what the hell is he talking about? And so I open up my phone and then I read an entire blow up on our Facebook band chat. And I'm looking at it going, this is so odd. What the hell happened? And I explained, "Hey, I'm doing this to promote the upcoming show that we have at Tonight Live Happening Bar." And he's like, "You know what? Screw this. I'm out." And Mario left. And I never like that was quite honestly the end of that. And I was just very confused by the entire thing. And I'm like, "Oh well, I knew this was going to happen eventually. I'll start looking for drummers." And I started hitting the ground running. I don't know a lot of people, so I asked some of the people that were around. They didn't have anybody. I did Craigslist and Kijiji, and I got some people that were interested. We had an audition to come out, and the person that we were going to bring out for that night no showed, and that immediately killed the energy that was in the room. I was just sitting there unfazed going, "Cool. Well, we've got 28 songs in the tank. It would be a real sort of weird thing if we ended it like this. Let me go and find other people." I drove back, and when I finally made it back, Paul said on the group chat, "It's no longer fun. And I'm going to go and do my separate ways." And Mikey, who was our bassist, who out of everyone here, I looked at him and I'm like, "You're doing this as a hobby. You've got a career that you're really happy for. I don't like I knew when I signed both Mikey, that I knew that, okay, this isn't something that he wants to be a career musician for. So when Paul had left and Mario had left, Mikey was just sitting there going, well, that's kind of the end of it. And I was just sort of sitting there and I was devastated because for me, WCS was something that I put so much effort and attention and blood, sweat, and tears into it. Like a lot of people don't understand is that a lot of the money that was going into, like, for example, we'll record the stuff, we'll pay for the recording fees, but like me putting out the music that we have for like Show Me the Light, Melancholy, and the EP itself, all of that came from me. The money that goes into web hosting a band's website. And even then for things like, say you want to be at Canada Music Week, you have to put money down in order for them to consider you. And even if you don't get considered, they give you free tickets for Canada Music Week. That was money that I had put down as well. So all of that was going into it. And to have all this blood, sweat, and tears and have the rug pulled out from underneath me, um, it has been devastating for me. I have seen both Paul J. Doran and Mario because they both play in the same band together, another band, as well as in Mario's in his own respective thing. And for me, it was a gut punch because they're able to do this thing, and I'm back from the ground zero with nothing. And I looked at it, and I had this album, this EP, and I'm like, I'm devastated, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, I feel like I've been abandoned, but I know that I will feel way worse if I don't release this EP because then what was all of this for? And I looked at it and I'm like, "Okay, well, how do I get this out? All the songs have been mixed and mastered. I need to get a, someone to do album artwork because Mario originally did the album artwork for our first 3 singles. He's no longer on the plate. He's no longer on the table. How do I do this? I found Anthony Haley, who is this great, artist, digital artist out of Hamilton, Ontario, um, who I contacted, and I asked him, "How much is it gonna be?" He gave me the money, and I'm like, "Cool. I'm willing to work with that." So I sent him the idea for what the EP was. I gave him a list of all the tracks that he listened to, and within a week or so, he gives me the rough draft, and he gets it, nails it right on the head, gets it perfectly done. I look at him and say, "Cool, let's see a little bit more of this." And he actually used because he is from Hamilton. He uses the background of it was, I think it was Jackson Square in Mississauga. It's the major shopping mall outlet that's there in Hamilton. And he added more to it. He added the people that were on fire. The only critique that I had for him was like, hey, could you make the cigarette more pronounced? Because I have no idea what's if the guy's smoking a cigar or if it looked like a Cheeto or something like that. And he was just like, all right, cool. And he did that. And so I immediately, I had the album artwork that was done. Um, I set the date for April 7th. That gave me enough time to go out and to plan my media tour for this, because it's not just get this EP and toss it out into the middle of the wilds. No, because then no one's going to really listen to it. If I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to hit it with everything that I've got, and I'm going to give it the due diligence and the justice that it deserves. So I was looking at it going, okay, well, let's start working on writing a press release. Let's start sending some stuff out. Let's start getting in contact with people that do podcasting, like you, TJ Hodder. It's an honor and privilege for you to bring me onto this show, even if it is a little bit bittersweet. Um, it's just naturally how I am. There was a gentleman a couple weeks ago that I met at a open mic who he said, "Hey, come down to my place. We'll jam. We'll see if we can hit it off." And I told him a little bit about it, and he's like, "Why are you putting money into something that's already sort of dead in the water?" And I looked at him and I'm like, because even though it's dead in the water, it deserves the respect. It deserves me giving it everything, because if I don't give it everything, sure, it's costing me money, but I'm going to be living with that regret for years and years after my life. And sorry, years and years after the EP's launch. And I can't do that. If I'm going to see things through, I'm going to see it through with the best of my ability. And that's what I mentioned to Paul when we were forming WCS. It's like, if we're going to do this, we're going to give it everything that we've got, and we're going to see it through to the end. We're not going to leave any stone unturned, and I was able to live up to that obligation. Uh, Unfortunately, Paul wasn't. Um, but at the same time, it is bittersweet. Um, and it feels very hollow, but at the same time, I'm proud of myself for doing this and for seeing it through.
One, just to talk from my standpoint for a second too, like when you messaged me about this and you were very upfront right away, you said, "Hey, just so you know, this
Yeah.
is it. Like we are done." Like,
Yeah.
and there's that little thing where it's like, well, why would you bother promoting it? But I was like, no, like he wants to see this through. He wants to finish this. And I'm like, you know what? I'd be the same way. And out of respect to the rapport that we have, like I'm like, no, like I want to be able to provide a platform for that, because it's like it wraps this up nicely, and it's a very powerful EP, and it's a great EP, and everyone who was involved with it played well and did well. It deserves that. It deserves to be spoken about and deserves to be out there. And I'm so happy you're doing that, because there's
Mhm.
probably 90% of the people listening to this, if they're in that situation, might have been like, ah, well, that sucks.
Yeah.
Maybe not 90% of people, but definitely a lot of people would be like, ah, like that sucks, but it is what it is.
So
So
I'll describe it to the people that are listening onto the podcast right now. It is overwhelmingly an awful feeling to have your band sort of capsize, because I'm one of those people who's like, if people have to bow out, I'll replace them. If I'm someone who's just like, I only get involved in a project if I know for a fact this is something that I'm going to dedicate my life to. And to have that, it feels like something that you worked so hard is stripped from you. It felt like a part of my life was ripped out of me. And to sit there and looking around, and you're never supposed to compare yourself to other people. And I know that this is a negative thing, but like I looked around at some of the bands that I did shows with, and some of the other musicians that are there, and it felt like I was alone. And I'm looking at them going and doing some amazing things, and I'm like, I wish from my heart of hearts that that could have been me. that I could have, like, it for me, I don't have to be successful. And we're just like, "Oh, what is success for you?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't need to be a world tour kind of guy. I don't need to be someone who goes across Canada," but, like, we were making progress. We were creating this EP. We were doing shows in Toronto almost monthly. We expanded into Oshawa and Hamilton, and our songs were starting to connect to other people. Um, and I just would have liked to have been able to continue that, because once again, 28 songs, and I would live and die by those songs. After this EP, I had already had plans for the second EP. I knew what songs were going to be on that second EP. I knew what the title of that EP was going to be. Um, I was sitting there and I'm like, to have all of that removed, all of that stuff that was left unsaid, and it feels hollow. And once again, I haven't talked to any of the members of WCS since then. Like, I had met Mario at a show. Like, this is before the final split up, before Paul finally left. And, like, I gave him that sort of that hug, I wish you well, man. But in the back of my mind, I was just sitting there and I'm like, I don't have anything to say to you, because you had they had said some incredibly hurtful things to me that I dealt with, because my job was to keep the band together, to keep us moving, and sometimes you need to know when to hold yourself back, otherwise it'll cause a collapse. But there were a lot of really mean-spirited and hurtful things that happened with Mario. Um, and there's a lot of hollowness and a lot of, it once again, I feel like I've been abandoned. And it hurts to have to get up, dust yourself off, and want to possibly do that again. I understand now why there's a lot of people that immediately after their band gets obliterated, they walk away from the industry. And I've had talks with people. I'm like, why don't you do this anymore if this is something that mattered so much to you? It can kill it it'll kill your soul to have that ripped from you. But at the same time, I know the type of person that I am. Both you and I are creative people. I will dust myself off and I will try again until I can't do it anymore, until I can't physically do it anymore. And right now I'm hurting, but I'm still out there every weekend, almost every week, um, heading up open mics, communicating with musicians, shaking hands, kissing babies, trying to find new people to work with. And I hope the next time that you bring me onto your show that I have something that's more positive, that is something that I can, look at you and say, I finally did it. I finally made it. I'm happy about myself, and but for that time being, I'm here where I am. And once again, got to lick my wounds, dust myself off, and pray that the next group that I'm in doesn't have those glaring red flags, and has people that are able to take charge and to help carry that weight together. Because there were attempts to do that. Um, like, I did see other people that tried to network with other bands, like some of the other members of WCS tried to network with other bands and didn't get shows, but they at least still made an attempt. And Michael Barnov, once again, our bassist, despite the fact that he was someone who treated it very much like a hobby, um, was planning on getting T-shirts printed and had printed a T-shirt with the WCS logo, like had made merch stuff. So, like, yeah, it wasn't, they weren't as successful in attempting, but there was an attempt, and I appreciated that. And I hope the next people that I get together with, it's not just me doing all of the managerial stuff, because once again, it takes a lot out of you. And it became my entire life. And when it was taken from me, it really took a chunk out of me. And I hope that I have other people that have that same drive that are able to help make it grow and move forward. Sort of a dour ending to this podcast. But,
Well, and it's important to have these conversations too, right? It's
Yeah.
important to know what's going on, and I mean, I thank you for sharing that. And at the end of the day, you can wish everyone well, and that's all well and good, and it's very mature. But
Mhm.
also, it's okay to also be upset and
Yeah,
be like, God damn it, like it's also okay to feel like that. And
yeah.
I, knowing you from talking to you the last couple of times that I have, like, you're already dusting yourself off. And I was going to ask you what was next, but we already know what's next.
Yeah.
You're going to keep doing your thing, and you're going to keep, being the charismatic person that you are and the talent that you are, and you're going to keep doing your thing and keep taking names and kicking butt. And I'm sure that the next time that we link up, whatever that looks like, that's going to be the focus of the conversation. So
If you guys watching the podcast are curious or interested, you can find out more about WCS on WCStheband.com. It'll have a link to the EP that is currently out. And as well as if you are interested and you do want to talk to me, I'm available on all platforms under the username Sonic MTD, which is capital S, small O, small N, small I, small C, capital M, capital T, capital D. I'm more than willing to meet up with people, and if we hit it off, maybe we can start a band or be part of a band. We'll see how that goes. Or if you just want to hear me review and critique anime and video games, I'm also more than willing to do that as well.
we'll make sure to have some links down below too, folks. But Matt, man, always a pleasure. Great to talk with you. Thanks for sharing everything with the EP, man. I appreciate you.
It's a pleasure, TJ. Love you, brother. Have a good night.
All right, folks, there you have it. My conversation with Matthew Tyler DeLeo from WCS, well, formerly from WCS, talking all about WCS's brand new EP, World on Fire, here on the Hodder Show Music Showcase. That was a really fun episode, and it was really interesting to hear all about what we spoke about at the end there, talking about the kind of the band dissolving and the turmoils that you can get into with that. And I think it was a very cathartic conversation for Matthew. So I hope that it was anyway. And big shouts to Matt for being so candid with us and sharing this EP and sharing all the stories from the recording process and all that. It was always a blast to get to chat with him about music or just things in general. And I'm sure you'll see him on again soon. And best of luck to everybody who's involved with WCS, with what they're doing now. And of course, Matthew himself. I want to thank you guys so very much for listening. If you are still listening, you're seriously the best. I appreciate you so much. And if you would like to continue to support the show, you can do so by checking us out. We have Facebook and Instagram. We also have a Discord. If you want to join the Discord, shoot me a message and let me know. You can find us on all over the social medias, as mentioned, under The Hodder Show. We also, of course, can be reached by email anytime, thehoddershow@gmail.com. And if you would like to maybe support the show a little more, considering joining the Hodder Show Patreon. That's right. We have a Patreon, $1, $5, and $10 tiers. $1 will get you a shout out at the end of every single episode of the show, as well as a fun other few perks on the Discord. $5 or more a month will get you access to the exclusive podcast that I have over there on the Patreon, the Tapes of Trepidation, a horror narration podcast. And $10 or above will get you all that, as well as some extra behind the scenes things on the Discord, as well as merch discounts once I do hit my goal of $100 USD a month, which I'm very close to. So fingers crossed that we can, I'd really love to get there this year. Have a steady $100 a month for like 2 months, launch the store, start getting some serious merch going. That'd be really, really cool. But it is time to give a shout out to my Patreon supporters, my HUD heads. We, of course, have Scott Duquette, Ronan Kumori of Baseline Feed, Wolf Delta Pi of Baseline Feed. Actor extraordinaire, Eric Phones. Writer extraordinaire, an all-around wonderful guy, Arthur Unk. Mike Quintero of Shudder Radio. Author C.M. Peters, as well as one of the people behind Baseline Feed. Mr. Jaybird himself, Jason Reese from Jaybird Digital Arts. Kelly Sisson. Terry and Janet Hodder. Brandon Bowden from Bowden Voice. And last but certainly not least, Neil Skarupa from Neurotic Voice. Not necrotic voice, neurotic voice. So, shout outs to you, Neil. Thanks for the patience in correcting me several times. That is just how we do things over here on the Hodder Show. Sometimes I just add a letter for no apparent reason, because that's just how we do. If you're still listening to this, you're seriously the best. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and we will catch you next time right here on the Hodder Show. Take it easy, guys.